This is a working session for Guam Waterworks Authority. The time I have is 4:37. For the record, those present here today is myself, Commissioner Michael Limchaco, Commissioner Simon Sanchez, and in the building but not in the room is Commissioner Francis Santos. On audio, we have Commissioner Judy Gutherds. So everybody's here. Commissioner Santos stepped out for a minute. He'll be right back, but we're going to get started. Miguel, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The first issue that we have for decision is Resolution 35, FY 2020, relative to the Route 4 sewer line rehab and replacement project. This is change order number 3. We're seeking approval for this project, which you know is nearing completion on Route 4 in Hagåtña to rehabilitate the relief sewer line that was placed in service or constructed many years ago but has not been placed in service because of problems we've had with infiltration and inflow. During the complex work at the O'Brien Drive intersection with Route 4, the contractor encountered unknown utilities and concrete encasements, which significantly impacted his ability to complete the work. It took longer than expected and changed the manner in which the construction had to occur. There was significant hand digging, confined space because of the concrete encasement that made the work difficult, and they weren't able to use equipment. So that slowed their progress. They subsequently filed a request for change, which was upwards of a couple $100,000, and I believe that the CM through their documentation negotiated that work down significantly, and so we are seeking approval for this change order, which exceeds the contingencies remaining on this project. So we need an additional $58,378. That would bring the total authorized contract amount to $2.854 million. The work has already been completed. This was part of the negotiation for that change request. We asked the contractor to continue with diligence so that we could complete the project. There was, as you know, a scheduled impact, but we are still on track to complete by September of 2020. Funding source that we're asking for approval for is SRF funds and, if necessary, bond funds.
Okay. Is this the same contract? Do we only have one contractor for this entire project all the way to the wastewater treatment plant, or are there two?
There's two, sir.
Okay.
And the other contractor has significantly completed his
work.
portion of the work.
Okay, who's responsible for the intersection of Route 1 and Route 4? That's still not done.
That's this contractor.
That's this contractor. They're very close.
Right.
Because I saw them, they were like, they had it already, like I thought they were going to pave it.
I think they're going to pave it
today, tomorrow, sometime soon.
They had the flowable fill in, they've got everything ready, it's just the top, the asphalt that needs to be laid.
Okay.
Right?
So this is the same contractor. So we're almost done. The other contractor's just about finished too?
Right.
Okay, good. Anybody?
September's next month, yeah.
Any questions?
You're hoping next 45 days we're done, huh?
Yes.
40 days? Perfect.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, Francis.
I have no questions really. This is a project that we've been needing to do. You know, as stated, it's a project where it wasn't completed. We had to complete some portions. This is an old project because for those of you who passed by that area in Route 4, there's huge sections that were never paved. For decades, they weren't paved. And, you know, now we finally got around to fixing. There's a lot of these little loose ends, but I'm glad we're getting them done. That's the important thing. We continue to make progress. That's the good thing. So, are there any questions? Commissioner Chaco.
Oh, thank you. So Miguel, is it is it common for you to proceed with the authorization for work pending the approval of the additional budget? Is there, I know we passed some resolutions that give you some leeway on, you know, the amount of money that, as a general manager, you're allowed to make decisions on, but is it common for this to happen in which, I know the expediency of the project was the reason why you wanted it to continue, so it wasn't delayed any further?
Well, the contract provisions don't release the contractor from the obligation to complete the project. And the provisions also provide for how to address claims that the contractor may have because of what he feels is additional work.
Okay, this is in the construction agreement?
I'm sorry?
This is in the construction
Yes.
agreement? Okay.
This is being handled exactly as it's supposed to be handled in the construction agreement.
Okay.
So, and no monies have been paid out yet until you get the approval. The
No,
approval.
monies on this change order have not been paid out because we
Right.
just completed negotiating, getting
The
to an
change order.
agreement on the amount.
Okay.
The only
Yeah.
reason we're coming back to, normally if this would fall within the contingency, then we would.
You would have
covered.
been fine, but you went over.
Yes.
Okay, no problem. Commissioner Sanchez?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. And I think Commissioner Limpiaco asked a good question on the budget, but this is a CIP. It's funded by our capital fund, right? Our bond funding, right? This is not an operating,
This is an SRF funded project.
so does it? Oh, right. So it comes out of, right. But it doesn't come out of our ratepayer. It doesn't come out of our ratepayer funds directly. This is EPA money to help us finish this $3.8 million project. This is like a CIP that's funded either by a bond or in this case,
Correct.
US EPA money. So this is good. This is, okay. I just want to make sure. So it doesn't affect the budget that we'll be looking at.
And then, Miguel, you had mentioned that the contractor had come back with a price for the change order, but it was negotiated down. What was the initial price from the contractor?
One second, Commissioner.
Just tell her right on the phone.
Judy, can you hear us? Judy?
Do you want me to mute her?
Yeah. No, okay, she's talking to somebody, okay. Is there a way to mute her from our side? I think he's talking to,
And she can self-mute.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
yeah.
She should do it.
I don't know if she knows how to
Whenever
do
she
that.
needs to chime in, she can just unmute it.
Yeah, unmute herself.
354,000 is what they.
Yes, beautiful.
154?
354.
So 354 negotiated down to 58?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Good job.
Good job. And you know, unfortunately, our infrastructure on the island, there's a lot of these things, these utilities that were put in place and were not really known, you know, until you start digging.
My concern is these change orders can get, you know, these are where, you know, costs can start to go over budget. And
Right.
so, you know, it's nice to hear that a change order was negotiated down from 354,000 to 58, just to keep it
Yes.
in line.
Okay. Any further questions? Any further questions? No? Okay, thank you, Miguel. Moving on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next, we have pulled item 2.2 on the agenda, resolution 36. So we're moving on to resolution 37 FY 2020, which is relative to the collective bargaining agreement, and I'll ask the AGM AS to present on that.
Thank you, Miguel. Commissioners, Mr. Chairman, we're happy and pleased to present to you for approval, the updated collective bargaining agreement between GWA and the Guam Federation of Teachers. Currently, there's 54 GWA employees represented by GFT, which is about 14% of our total number of employees. We've met with GFT over many months. The preceding collective bargaining agreement expired in May 2019. And after many months of negotiations and updating of the preceding agreement, we made several improvements to it. The major changes to it were, one, the contract period was extended for 5 years. The existing was only in effect for 1 year at a time, which was approved by MOU every year. So this agreement is in effect for 5 years. It authorized GFT stewards to participate in the preparation and revision of GWA policies and procedures at the subcommittee level. It added mediation and arbitration as options under the grievance procedures. It updated the performance evaluation section to reflect the current pay-for-performance evaluation policy. It added existing rules for compensation adjustments following promotions and demotions. It included the recently updated GWA drug and alcohol-free workplace policy, and it added ergonomic assessments of the work environment. So those are the major changes to the agreement. We ask for your favorable consideration to approve it. The agreement itself was unanimously ratified by the GFT membership and their executive council.
If nobody's got a question right now, I have one question. I thought, according to the Attorney General, I might be wrong, but I remember hearing something about how you're not allowed to have mediation, or mediation's not allowed in a contract with the government of Guam. Kelly? We can't hear you.
Unmute.
Okay, one more.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. You're thinking of arbitration, not mediation.
Okay, I'm sorry, I got it wrong then. So there's no arbitration in this contract?
It says mediation and
It
arbitration.
says mediation and arbitration.
Yeah, there is an option for arbitration under our grievance procedures.
But according to the Attorney General, are we allowed to get in a contract that has arbitration?
Yeah, these are,
I tell you what,
contracts I think are separate. I'll make sure, I'll
Okay.
say that one more time to make sure.
yeah, I think you need,
It's different than the contractor situation.
okay, well, check into it for Tuesday night, okay? Have an answer. Anybody else? Yes, Judy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to be certain, Mr. Chairman, that this agreement that's proposed is consistent in every section with the laws of the government of Guam. Because I don't want to be called out later on for approving an agreement that is not consistent with what's required in the government of Guam. So we need some assurance from our attorney, and I'd like it in writing before we vote on this, that all parts of this agreement comply with the rules and regulations that apply to us as agencies, speaking for GWA, and with the laws regarding unions, the government of Guam, and any other pertinent laws and regulations.
Kelly, did you get that? Kelly, did you get that?
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Butako, you had a question?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So how does this work between the mediation and arbitration for grievances as it pertains to the Civil Service Commission? Are these two separate types of grievances to reconcile, or?
No, so the process, the employee could choose to go to mediation, or they could choose to go to arbitration. So both would bypass Civil Service Commission. So it'd be mutually agreed to. They were both added to actually improve the grievance procedure. The current procedure, we felt under DOA is pretty cumbersome. It requires the standing up several different committees. I think 2 different committees that have to review the grievances. So sometimes that can go months and months on end. So we felt like this was a alternative that could help us get to a mediation between the employee and the manager or whoever they have a disagreement with.
So the employee waives their further rights to pursue grievance with the Civil Service Commission based on the results of the mediation or an arbitration? So they no longer can call or file another grievance with the Civil Service Commission based on the outcome of the arbitration or mediation?
That's correct. It would be considered a contract in either case
Okay.
between the employee and
And who covers the cost?
GWA does.
So GWA pays for all of the arbitration, whether they come out on the right side of that arbitration or mediation, the utility still covers the cost? It's not borne by the employee if the arbitration or mediation has no merit?
I'll have to verify on the arbitration, but on the mediation side, yes.
Okay, and this is a good idea for the utility, why?
Because we believe it'll get to a resolution quicker than if we were to go through Civil Service Commission.
Okay, but the utility does not expend any costs other than potentially legal counsel's attendance at the Civil Service Commission, right? So it only will add cost.
It may, but the arbitration fees are, I believe, are supposed to be split equally between the parties.
Okay, that sounds like it would be more in line with what, in the private sector we're used to seeing, right? Is either there's a joint split cost or, if someone brings the arbitration or mediation without merit and it rules in their favor, they're responsible for paying, for the cost, right? So it would be weird if we just paid for the costs regardless of, someone, filing a grievance without merit.
Okay, I have a question. You need to check on that, okay? Kelly and
Yes, sir.
everybody needs to check on that. I have a question. Now, this contract covers only the employees who are members of the union, right? Yeah. So in other words, the other employees who are not members of the union will...
87% of them are not
Yeah.
bound by this contract.
80, so they will go to civil service. They can't avail themselves, right?
Yes.
Just make sure. Okay? I think that's the way it works, but I want to make sure. Let's
Are
ask.
you planning to have an open enrollment? Chris? If we enact this?
There's no open enrollment. I believe that employees can join the union anytime they want.
Okay.
We had it in place before, we've made improvements to it. We think it's beneficial for the employee and the authority.
I just want to add that the mediation, generally the costs are very low, and that's why we opted to cover the cost of it. I mean, generally a mediation wouldn't run more than a few $100s.
Mm-hmm. And the mediation is done by our legal counsel between the utilities legal counsel and the union's legal counsel.
It could be, we would agree on who to go to. We would generally look for an outside third party to do it, but if it could be done between the attorneys if everybody agrees to it.
For mediation, why wouldn't we? Why would we go to a third party? I can understand arbitration, but with mediation, why wouldn't we just do it ourselves?
Well, sometimes it involves a lot of emotions and on both sides, and so sometimes it's good to have a third-party mediator who's trained in that kind of procedural, I guess, discussion to kind of keep the peace and get through those types of mediation, opposed to making it a tense legal discussion. So the point is to try to get everybody in a room and work it out as quickly as possible to alleviate whatever the issues are.
I don't have any other questions, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Santos?
Oh, I do.
What happens if we don't agree to this on Tuesday?
If you don't agree
If it doesn't pass muster, what happens?
well, if the basis for it is because there are specific provisions you'd like to see
No,
revised,
but-
then we take it back. But if you're rejecting it wholesale, then I think we have a bigger issue.
Which is?
No.
It's with the management.
No agreement with the union.
I've been in that boat before, sir.
Yeah.
So, with a much larger workforce.
If we do not agree, and the work rejected, then GFT would probably file a lawsuit and go from there. They have the right to do that. So.
Okay, but the MOA that currently exists expires on a certain date? Is it date certain?
It already expired.
So we effectively don't have an agreement?
Since May of 2019. So,
We've been in good faith negotiations to revise this.
right, and so a lawsuit would not just instantly come out, right? You're still in good faith negotiations at this point. I do, yeah, I still have a question regarding.
Sure. Hold on a second. Kelly, did you have a comment to make?
No, I agree.
Okay. 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 Commissioner Chapo, you had another question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So regarding the updated drug and alcohol-free workplace policy, what exactly was updated, and why was that a requirement for the union? What did the union disagree with the previous?
They didn't. We revised, the CC revised it to a zero tolerance.
Okay,
That's
so
correct.
that's what exists now is a zero tolerance?
Yeah, so most of the things that were updated in this were, we have existing policies that were not reflected in the old agreement, such as the pay for performance, the drug-free workplace, and also the compensation for promotions and demotions, things like that. So it was updated to reflect what our current policies are, which includes the zero tolerance drug-free workplace.
Okay, and that's for all positions, or are there certain, like, safety-related?
For TDP.
Safety designated positions?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Designated positions.
Okay.
But not excluding a pre-employment drug screen, right? That's still part of the policy?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Santos, you had a question?
So going back, when you were negotiating, what were the, I want to say demands of the union, if any?
Did they have any?
They had several demands. One was to liberalize the drug-free workplace policy, which we did not.
Okay,
There was also a attempt to increase the pay for performance percentages that would be paid to workers from 4% to 6%, which we did not.
and did they tell you how they wanted to fund that?
Didn't get that far.
I mean, gentlemen, I can speak to experience because I sat on a board that dealt with a union. The only difference was that in that particular board, there was a board member designated to sit with management at the negotiating table. And I have a member of your team that was present at that time. So, I mean, I'm not saying we wanted to be invited, but if we don't come to an agreement, what happens then? See, that's still my question.
So I think the demands that were made were effectively addressed by management and ultimately accepted by the GFT. We landed on reasoned ground for moving forward with the revisions as we have them presented. So they accepted the current policy on our drug and alcohol-free workplace, and the compensation remains as is. One of the things that they also wanted, I think, was to be part of the policy making or SOPs, and we've allowed that at the subcommittee level prior to going to the SOP committee.
Yeah, so the request on that was actually, they wanted to be part of the decision-making process at the committee level, which we said no, and we allowed them to participate at the subcommittee level.
Okay.
So in general, we're happy with the agreement. We believe that it's a good agreement for both sides. The one thing it did was it addressed their concerns without changing any of our existing policies, especially the ones that were put in place by the board.
They passed that threshold.
That's 10%.
Okay. Okay, if there are no further questions, I would just remind the commissioners that you have the time over the weekend to go through the materials some more. We're not limited from further discussion. Set our meeting on Tuesday night, just to remind everybody, okay?
And sir, may I add one thing? The
Sure, go
Exhibit B shows all the markups that were done from the previous agreement to the existing agreement. So if you want to see exactly what changed, you'll be able to see that in Exhibit B.
That's on the board books, right?
Correct.
Okay, good. Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, Miguel, that's it?
That's it for that specific issue, sir. The next one is Resolution 58 FY 2020, which is
The budget.
approval of our budget.
Okay.
And I'll ask the CFO to present on that.
Sure.
Can I ask you, how do you want to do these measures? Do you want to, since we passed out pretty much, I gave you guys a narrative and somebody printed out the, do you want to just go to questions? That way we don't, I mean, I'm sure we've all read the narrative. Only it's very easy. I'm just asking, throwing that out. Kind of like we're now in committee of the whole.
Yeah.
Right, but is Stalin gonna speak on, is
She
she?
can. I mean, I'm just asking what is your,
Oh, okay.
Maybe just to introduce the budget into the record. and
Okay.
she can
Give us the
articulate.
high level.
I mean, we have some questions, I have some
Well-
questions, yeah.
Yeah.
Resolution 38 FY 2020 is relative to the adoption of the GWA fiscal 2021 operating budget as adjusted. It proposes a $89 million budget against revenues of $113 million. As you might recall, CCU approved the 5-year financial plan back in June 2019, which covered FY 2020 to FY 24. That 5-year plan was subsequently sent to the PUC, who acted on the 5-year plan in February 2020. The PUC did not approve the rate increases at the level that we requested. They approved a 5% increase effective March 2020, and again, a 5% increase in October 2020. They also adjusted certain expenditures downward, primarily personnel, the utilities, and O&M expenses, mainly related to work on non-revenue water. So basically, besides the 10% budget transfer that is typically part of resolution, we've also requested that the GM be given the authority, if the economy bounces back to levels sooner than we hope, to adjust revenues and expenditures up to but not more than the pre-pandemic revenue and expense projections for FY21 as approved by the PUC back in February. I also wanted to mention that this budget provides for a full-time employee level of 400, and we're going to ask to amend the resolution to exempt temporary interns from this count, so that as we put on engineering and accounting interns, that this 400 FTE level doesn't affect them. And I'm happy to go through the numbers as you'd like.
Okay.
So just
Go ahead.
Just a
Miguel.
clarification, so the three columns that are presented in the table, the first column on the left is the fiscal year 20 projections,
Right.
and then the center column is FY '21 budget as was approved by the
You
PUC's
see
rate
the
order.
5% increase.
And then the FY '21 budget adjusted is that's our latest and greatest projections, and it also is in line with what has been included in the preliminary official statement for our 2020B
A
funding
bond.
bonds.
Oh, 2020B also.
Yeah.
Okay.
We were based on all the data we had up until March.
Okay.
In 2020B, we had 3 months more of
Through June.
Yeah.
data through June, and we
Okay.
updated our projections accordingly in order to both reflect what we anticipate the impacts to revenues would be, and then the
From the
cost containment
pandemic.
measures that we would have to take.
Yeah, that's because of the pandemic, right?
That's right.
Okay, good.
Right, so the FY '20 budget, projected budget as presented in the documents also reflect adjustments based on experience through June.
Okay. Questions? Commissioner Sanchez?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, the original rate increase that was requested for last year and this year was around 10%, something,
I think it was 10 and 8.8.
10 and 8,
8.5.
right? And then the PUC approved lower 5 and 5, so lower rate increase was granted, but a rate increase was granted, right? And the projected revenue of 113 million is down from the 126 million primarily. You're factored in the rate increase, but you're factoring, as the chairman pointed out, the reality of the reduced revenues of-
Demand, right,
on consumption, right? And so the adjusted budget is a reduction is an increase of revenue of only 7.7 million instead of what would have been 20 million had
Consumption
without
rebounded.
COVID, right? Okay, so it's a modest increase, primarily driven by some belief that there'll be some recovery next year, next fiscal year.
We're hoping for 80% by the end of the fiscal
So
year.
the projections
you're
take
good.
our June demand patterns through June, project those out for the remainder of fiscal year '20, and then
Calendar year.
for the first quarter of fiscal year '21, and then a slow recovery to potentially 80% of pandemic numbers
And Miguel, the 80% kicks in,
at the end of next fiscal year.
so,
So we're climbing, after the first quarter, we're slowly climbing
Slowly, right.
towards the 80% levels at the end of the fiscal year.
no, but how did you project that? I mean, when you say slowly climbing, did you assign a certain percentage every month increase? Or how would you project 80% demand increase if it's slowly stepping up, you know? How did that factor into your FY '21 budgeted revenue? You'd have to use some numbers, right, every month to project.
Well, it was
revenue.
mainly adjusting the commercial demand because what we've noticed has been happening is our water demand, the increase in residential has been replacing our commercial and water. The issue that we have is that the residential wastewater charges are based on a flat rate, and for commercial, it's based on volume. And so what we've done is to adjust the commercial, the shift back to commercial slowly through the end of the fiscal year, only to the 80% level.
No, I understand that. I'm just curious as to, in order to get to the numbers, you'd have to, assume some sort of percentage starting on some period of time, right? So maybe you're starting at a 65% on, May, and then 70 on June. I don't need the details. I'm just trying to understand the methodology.
So we carry the current June levels flat out to the first 3 quarters.
So
And
the end
then
of the
month over
calendar-
month, we're slowly increasing the wastewater numbers and the commercial and hotel water demand numbers.
So from January to September, that you're slowly,
Yeah.
some sort of
I don't know if
percentage
we're
increase?
doing it linearly, but in the financial model, I
Mm-hmm.
believe it takes those numbers into account and increases them to the 80% level at the end of the fiscal year.
So that would be,
Commissioner Sanchez.
just, that would be useful, just informative, just send us your, kind of your revenue projections. Because, I mean, I think we all appreciate that you're having to make forecast in a very difficult situation, right? And
Nobody
if I-
has the perfect crystal ball.
Right, and if I hear you right, you're hopefully forecasting an 80% recovery in demand, right? Not 100%.
Not 100%.
But an 80% recovery in demand, more in the second half of the fiscal year, not so much in the first half. And so that, maybe on Tuesday, just kind of show us
Sure.
kind of a comparison of 19, 20, and 21, just on the revenue. It just gives us a sense of how you're looking at it, right? I think your guess is as good, is as good as anybody's, right? I had a bunch of questions on just having management, and I think some of their answers on spending are in some of the stuff that Budget Chairman Santos gave us on the details, and then the rest you can just look at it and bring it to us on Tuesday. So if it's okay with
Go ahead,
the body,
Commissioner
I just wanted to go through them. So I'm on page 317 of the board books, all right? And I'm on page 4 of the handout from Budget Chairman Santos. So just very quick, first at water purchases, we're looking at an increase of $1.4 million. Is that because the Navy has raised their rate, or we're going to buy more from the Navy, or both?
You're comparing FY '20 to
I'm
FY
comparing, and I'm sorry, and I am comparing in all cases the FY20 projected budget, what we think we're spending this year, if I'm understanding this right, and what you think you're spending next year, right? I'm skipping the one in the middle, the budget, the PUC approved budget doesn't matter because that was pre-COVID. That was 5% and no COVID. That's not reality. The 113 versus the 126 in total revenues is a recognition that before COVID, we might have said we would think we'll do $126 million. Now with COVID, because of the decline in commercial sales, particularly the hotels, you've cut the 126 million to 113 million. And then you've correspondingly, in many cases, reduced your expenses to fit within 113 instead of 126. And your coverage is still good. You end up at the end of the year 1.4. So some of the stuff I'm looking at is just on the spend side, just trying to understand it. And any improvement in spending just improves your coverage or gives us a little protection in case our 80% guess should have been 70% or 65 or who knows, right? I mean, we're going to take it a day at a time like everybody else is really. But we need to pass the budget by Tuesday, and we will.
So most of our costs related to utilities tie directly to production. But the interesting thing about the cost of the water is it's based on the MOU, the agreement with the Navy.
Right.
And basically what they're trying to do is recover 100% of their costs. So we've been tracking this cost based on the recent bills from the Navy.
Are they raising their rate October 1?
I think it's subject to change month over month, but because they aren't working in the old working capital fund system, they're now on their general fund, I think is what they call it, so that it's 100% cost recovery.
They have to live off what we.
No, you're explaining their rationale. The factual question I'm trying to get at, is the Navy, as a result of however they're trying to recover their costs, is it producing a rate increase to GWA and its customers for the water we buy from the Navy? Or are we buying more water because the budget goes up $1.4 million? Something went up, either the rate went up or the buying went up or both went up, right? I just want to, for the record, just understand what's causing the increase. Yeah, because the Navy has been raising rates rather dramatically for about 7 years now. It's pretty ridiculous, frankly. That their rate increases are significant. In fact, maybe Tuesday, if you could summarize their rate increases for the last 5 years, and the volume. But is that why water purchases are forecast to be $1.4 million higher next year? Is because we may be buying the same amount of water, but it's gone up, or we're buying a little more water and it's gone up? That's a question if you could clarify by Monday, or if you don't know the answer now.
I think we know now that we do have a factor for the increase in the rates. And I think we projected that we will and may end up purchasing a little more, but we're making conscious efforts to try and control
Right, I noticed in the narrative, you're trying to keep as many of our wells up, and I know you've been transferring water as best you can. I mean, and the goal would be, until we completely get off the Navy, the need for us to buy water from the Navy, right? We're gonna be stuck, but unfortunately, and correct me if I'm wrong, my memory of what the Navy's been doing for quite some time now is rather huge rate increases to cover their own headaches, right? Which is impacting us, and we have to deal with it. But to the degree we can reduce our water buys, I know that's something that's important to you.
I suspect we may close the end of the year with prices that are slightly less than what we've been charged so far, because I think they're basing their calculations on what they charge us, on what their expenses are, and with the decrease in the price of oil and power, they are anticipating, informally I've heard that they are anticipating that our costs will go down for the last quarter.
Okay, but for the budget that you're having us look at, we're looking at 7.2 million in what you think you'll spend in 2020, and you're going to spend $1 million more than that in 21.
Right.
Am I reading that right? So that increase is coming from one or two places. A rate increase from the Navy, or increased purchase from the Navy, or both. If you could just clarify for us why are we, you're saving $1 million with GPA because of the lower rate. You're giving $1 million back to the Navy because of, I'm guessing, I think we all know what they are. It's either their rate or the amount of water we're buying, and everything we can do to buy less water from them obviously helps our ratepayer. Okay, I thought the salary and wage, it's a modest bump. You're saying, did you say in the narrative that you're delaying the migration to the 20th percentile, or you're modifying it?
No.
Or so is that the reason it goes up 900,000?
Yes.
So,
Between the pay for performance and the migration.
so in the budget request, the goal is to move all the GWA employees in FY21
That are below.
that are not at the 20th percentile to the 20th percentile. If they're above, they're going to just stay there. They might get a little pay for performance adjustment, but their overall pay. Okay, so, all right. So I just wanted to make sure I understood that. Yeah, you're capitalizing a little less labor this year. Your pension and benefits you can't do much about. This is your forecast of health insurance and contributions to the retirement fund, yeah? Yeah. What's the status of the health insurance?
Just because we're on the salaries and wages, I have a question. So the new positions budgeted in FY21, the 728K in new positions, what are those?
We were originally going to set up a construction unit to help with, to do internal projects, but we've taken that out. And we're going to delay that.
Okay, so that was what was budgeted, and then the adjusted is removed, okay.
Right. So we're hoping to put that back in for next fiscal year.
Okay. So, because I find that,
2022.
the FY21 budget PUC was pre-COVID, right? It was with our 5% rate hike and demand not collapsing, and we would have done better in revenue and therefore could have spent more money. I think overall the budget tries very hard to fit within size 113 instead of size 126 when it comes to revenue, and has made an educated guess as to how much demand might recover in FY21, and that's where you get the 113.
I'm still trying to reconcile the jump in revenue from the FY20 budget to the FY21 with those two PUC rate increase. So how do we go from 106 to 126 with only 1.5% increase mid-year?
The 106 already includes reductions. The original FY20 numbers were higher than this.
There was no COVID.
So we've already adjusted this downward twice
And
in response to COVID.
And so the FY21 budget is with the rate increases, but with the current demand?
Yes.
Right.
Okay. Right. And the FY20 budget is revised given the demand we're seeing now.
What's the reduction?
Because of the COVID.
We've actually adjusted it twice, once based on the March data, and then again for the June, through the June.
You're probably practicing for FY21.
Well,
There'll be some adjusting.
We've set up a streamlined financial model with the assistance of the guy who helped us with and so we're able to input every month's demand numbers, or our actual demand numbers, and we're monitoring that, and that's how we're making adjustments, and so it's helping us to manage.
Right, and you're forecasting $1 million increase in pension and benefits, which you really don't have much control over, right? You're anticipating an increase in health insurance? Is that in there?
Yes.
It's in there, okay. And does the pension contribution change in a fiscal year, or is it pretty steady?
I think did it go down?
I actually checked.
26 point something.
It's 26.97. I checked with Ricky Hernandez because I just wanted to make sure. And then he said you also have different contributions based on your.
The plan,
PC and
right.
Yeah, so I'm sure you
Right.
guys got that math.
Right.
figured out.
But the math is $1 million in additional pension and benefits, right? Right, that's what it came up
So
with.
the only question then remains is that if President Trump wins, right, you get to remove the payroll tax. 1 point something
There
percent.
you go.
Is that what he's talking about for us, or?
I thought
No,
it was, I thought it was
No,
a
no.
temporary.
But do Guamers participate in Medicare? Medicaid?
No, no, no,
They're not
the
on
income
Social-
tax withholding,
They're not on Social Security.
but income tax withholding.
No,
Not for
No,
GovCon.
no, the reduction Trump's talking about is the FICA,
The FICA and the Medicare,
Right,
so
but we don't pay in the FICA on our.
only Medicare.
Medicare.
Yeah, only Medicare.
We do pay into Medicare?
Oh, yeah, we pay into Medicare.
Not
So GovGuam retirees can do Medicare and?
GovCon, starting in 1995, when I was the director of revenue tax, I put us into the Medicare system.
Okay.
So everybody since that time has been retiring and now gets their full Medicare at
And
65.
they can participate in full
Yes.
Medicare. So you've budgeted for, okay.
For
So that's
the
what Commissioner
Medicare.
Santos is referring to. If Trump wins, there's a reduction there.
There'll be
it's
a
FICA.
wipeout.
The withholding doesn't affect us budgetarily.
Yeah,
That's
but the
affects our
Medicare.
employees. Right. But Medicare's there, okay, okay. I mean, the wage and pension and benefits adjustment is actually relatively small in my view. And yet you're doing some migration you're slowly raising the kind of the pay of those employees that are still paid below the 20th percentile, which has been the policy for years in both utilities, is to gradually over time bump them up. So, okay, so that's it on that's it on the main stuff. On the smaller stuff, I wanted to go to training and travel, and you
Yes.
have a nice breakdown
The
on the
training.
stuff that Commissioner Santos provided us. It's on page, where did it go?
6.
Where did I put all my circles?
Page 6
Six.
of this one.
There you go, yeah, thank you. Page 6, and let's look at, can you talk to us about training and travel goes from 129,000 in 2020 to 351,000 in 2021. And if I recall, there was one big number.
Training went up 200 and,
Is that because of the, but I think it's training, as Commissioner Limtek was
I think
pointing
the
out.
training is almost tripled.
The training budget goes up, it's also a cost share with,
All the required training for the folks that get certified.
For
Certified
water and
It's
wastewater.
just because it's like every 2 years or so, and then so it's going to jump because it's almost tripling.
Yeah, it's going from
For
95.
FY20 though, we cut everything. When we first initiated the cost
What
containment.
was it at approved? Oh, really?
And then you cut it?
Cut it to 90.
95.
And then you wanted to go back to 260.
So what did we, in cutting it, what did you sacrifice? And in going back to 282, what are we regaining in training?
when we cut a lot of the AWWA participation, we cut IT also does a bunch of training, operators also go for training, we also have a HAS offer and a little training courses that all the operators, customer service, finance. A lot of that was deferred, even the in-house safety, space training, all of the group trainings kind of been deferred.
But I mean, it's a pretty aggressive reinstatement, so do you have like a so we cut a lot of training this year for all sorts of, the reality we're going through. We're trying to resume that training in 2021. And is there a narrative, or is there a...
We can put something together.
Just so we get a feel for, what is the training? Yeah, the kind of training that we're talking, and, how it benefits the ratepayer, I mean, so if we could do that. Okay, and then...
Also keeps our workers safe.
Yeah, that's how it benefits the ratepayer, right? Making sure our people know what they're doing and doing it well, and protecting the assets that we have invested in for our ratepayers, right? So, okay, and then on the advertising side is very small. Commissioner Guthertz and I can meet on a subcommittee level, but I notice it's doubled from 64,000 to 136,000. A lot more print ads, a lot more procurement ads, which in our mode, we're going to be procuring, we are constantly procuring, right? But I don't know if there's a detail on the advertising that perhaps you could show us at the committee level. It's not a big budgetary amount, but just because I'm on the committee with Commissioner Guthertz, it kind of gives us a feel what exactly, we're doubling the advertising budget, right? I'm not so much worried about the procurement ads, because that tells me that's required, you're bidding stuff out and you're projecting. Although it's a lot higher than it was in 20, did we just procure less in 2020 than we plan to do in 2021?
Well,
A
yeah,
lot of that has been reimbursed through CARES.
Oh, so some of this budget savings is because you got reimbursed for some of these costs?
Yeah, because a lot of the advertising, most of the advertising, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, we put a lot of that into notices and advertising for driving payments and
So-
savings.
Okay.
So the CARES Act did subsidize.
So I think what we'll do is we'll get together with Commissioner Guthertz after we do the budget. Again, it's a very small budgetary impact, and we can go over the details of the 2021 marketing outreach plan. We've been wanting to do that, and we can do that. But I just note for the record it doubled, but it's still only 136,000 total. On page 7 of the handout from Commissioner Santos.
Commissioner Sanchez, just a minute. I just want to make sure I didn't miss something. On the procurement ads, how are you accounting for the new projects you'll be issuing out, the bond projects that are coming? That's through O&M? Okay, got it.
Oh, so what are these procurement ads?
All these are regular bids.
Not O&M related?
Not related to bond projects, maybe.
Okay.
Typically the construction ads.
Construction ad, you mean telling people about it, or which?
The procurement ads is to.
In the paper.
When we advertise.
Oh, just saying there's construction going on? Oh, no, this is for bids.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bids, RFPs.
Okay. I mean, and only, again, it's small dollars, 10,000, 30,000, but what we're saying is we did less of those ads in 2020, we're going to do more of those ads in 2021. I just wanted to try to better understand that, yeah?
Okay. Commissioner Santos?
I got a question. So on procurement ads, are we required by law to be in a newspaper? Can we just use our website as the social media?
I think it says paper of
think
general
it says-
circulation
Circulation or something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
until that law gets
Okay,
changed.
Yeah.
is there do you have any data to support how many times our procurement people look at our website? Look at a particular RFP?
How many times the public?
Right,
Well, we know the number that registered from our website,
okay.
but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's
they're
where they
looking.
first saw it.
Okay, now, the reason why I'm asking, and we have senators here that are willing to go down to the legislature and say, save us a little bit of money, because it's all gonna add up now, and wipe out the,
Requirement.
Do it on, like the feds do. You can go to Fed bids op and you look at the federal
your own
bids.
website. You don't have
Yeah,
to
you
do
don't
that
run at paper.
daily circulation.
Right.
So some information if you have, give,
Saves money,
Saves money.
saves money.
Safety or something.
Yeah.
So while we're on CARES Act, what is the expected reimbursement for CARES Act? Or anticipated?
392?
392,000.
392,000, of which we've received about 110 or so.
Yeah, we're getting money for protective equipment, for telework tools, for public service announcements, for disinfection.
Cleaning.
We use some of it to offset our drive-through costs.
Include personnel, right?
No,
No,
It's strictly hand-on kind of.
yeah, supplies and contracts.
for us anyway.
Okay. Commissioner Sanchez, you still
So
want...
now on page
goes
7,
on.
let's take a look at page, audit and computer maintenance, we go from 677,000 to 1.1 million, almost double. We've got another 110,000 in consulting services, 200,000 more for the Oracle upgrade. Can you talk a little bit of is the consulting services related to the Oracle upgrade?
Cybersecurity. Cybersecurity penetration test.
Ah, okay. That's a whole new contractual service suite.
Every other year.
Okay. And did we put, so we didn't put out a bid, we have an existing contract? Okay, all right. But,
So it'll go out in 2021.
Are we working together with GPA on this?
Yes,
So this is going to be our share?
right.
okay,
So,
on the cybersecurity side, okay. And we had nothing spent this year, but we're going to spend 111,000 next year. Okay. Similar, and then the Oracle is the 320 we spent this year is going to go up to 500 next year, 500,000 next year. Is that just part of the way the licensing is paid?
We're going to go live, we're anticipating going live in April.
Okay, okay, all right, so this is the cost to get it over the hump. Okay, so those are the major reasons why it's doubled. Okay, and then on the last, page 9 of 9, this is the internally funded CIPs, right? Correct me if I'm reading it wrong, we're going from 5 million in 2020 to 10.4 million in 2021, of which and the main difference of 5.4 million is engineering projects, the CIP, that's the internally financed, we're using it out of our cash flow from our rates, right? That's the internally financed CIPs. Is that list summarized in our CIP module from engineering? We wanted to look at what that is, but we didn't spend 5.4 million in 19 or 20, and it jumps up in 21 because, help me understand why
Isn't that
nothing
part of
for
the
2 years
rate
and then 5.4 million.
Nothing, the totals are 5.5 and 5 for 2019 and 2020, and then 10.4 for 2021.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking under other projects, I'm sorry.
So what we ended up doing in this year is we were able to use some of the bond funding to, because of the COVID, the impact of the COVID on our cash, we shifted some of the, we deferred some of the pay-go, and we used bond funds.
Use bond funds to make it up. Initially, before we issued the bonds, the 2028 bonds, we were just, as part of the cost containment, saying we have to defer because we're not going to have the revenue to fund these capital improvement projects. So we were pushing it out to the end of the year, figuring we would recover, or end of the 5-year period, we would recover and we would pick those up later. But because when we did issue the bond sale, we were able to, for the same par amount,
You got a premium.
we got premium.
Right.
So
About
we
14
used
million.
those additional deposits to the construction fund to take the place of what we
Deferred.
what we took away for the revenue funding.
Right, because your revenues had fallen and you had a lower rate adjustment, but, okay.
When we did our 5-year projections for the Series 2020B bonds, we wanted to update, the total amount of the capital improvement program does not change, but the funding sources now are shifting.
Internal
because of
revenue. So that's why if I look on other projects at the bottom, engineering projects, that's what I meant when I said there was 0 in 19 and 20, but then it jumps to 5.4, but that's because it was funded out of bond proceeds and not out of revenue. Next year, you're going to fund 5.4 out of revenue, but you actually spent some money on internal CIPs. What's the 2.4 million in facility renovations? Which ones are we doing?
I think that might be upper Tumon.
Upper 2-1.
Okay, if you can just confirm what that is.
Yeah,
on
no,
Tuesday.
I'm sorry, it is upper Tumon.
It is upper 2, okay, all right, okay. That's all my, wait, let's see, let me check my other piece of paper.
Okay. Well, you still have,
Well,
big,
what I like is I'll just give it to management and they can work on it. Some of it is just informational.
Sure.
So that Tuesday's meeting is a little faster. You did training travel, you did advertising, you did contractual, now I'm on the budget page 317.
Page 8 of 9 on.
Oh, no,
No, he's back to the board books, right?
Yeah,
Are
but
you
it-
on 317?
Contractual services, is this the one you're questioning? There's a big jump in it.
Contractual other.
Oh, I'm sorry, ground, oh, I
Yeah,
apologize.
contractual.
Commissioner Lomtiaco is right. I circled some on page 8. Yeah. So ground maintenance is going from 300 to 556,000? Is there a reason, do we know?
That's one of the first things we cut,
So you're going back to what you would have
Yeah.
normally spent,
right?
right? So you're hoping to
We're willing to get spanked by EPA if the grass grows too high at a well site for a while,
but not for a whole fiscal
not for
year?
next fiscal year if we can
Yeah,
afford to do it.
yeah. Okay, so that's what you did. Same thing with machine works going from 164 to 306? Machine work and fabrication?
Right.
You're catching up on.
So a lot of this is because you're
deferred.
anticipating a little more revenue from rate and a little more revenue from a recovery of demand. You're replenishing the spend on some of these CIP projects or maintenance projects. That's why the
What was
budget
deferred?
is showing, because it was
Deferred.
delayed this year. You
Yeah.
think you'll have some revenue next year. The part that I do appreciate, though, is if none of this happens in 2021, these also are projects that you can, reduce, if not delay completely, but just reduce and mitigate a little bit to fit within your revenue, because the revenue is as good a guess as anybody's. What I like about the budget is it maintains coverage. You're trying to touch all the pieces you can, based on the assumption. And if our revenues don't recover for whatever, mainly because demand doesn't recover, we would just squeeze down some of these items again that we've gone over. So some of the increase in the budget is based on the budgetary hope that, the one that's not hoped is there is a rate adjustment of 5% October 1, but you're having to make an educated guess on demand. And you're guessing some recovery will occur in 21, which gives you additional revenues, which allows you to spend a little more on things you suspended in 2020, 2019. Is that the way, that looks to me the way the budget was built. Right? Okay. And your coverage is still good. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I just
Thank
have one,
you, Francis.
I just have one question. The only other thing was, did you factor in any potential savings from the refunding of the 2020B?
Yes.
Is that in here
The
already?
debt service savings of about $1 million a
It's
year
in here.
are factored
Okay,
in.
got it. No
If we
problem.
do better, it'll be better.
Okay, great.
What's good about it? Okay. Ready for Tuesday.
Okay, we're good for Tuesday.
GM report? GM report? We're gonna have.
Do you want to do a
You want to do
GM
it now, or you want
report?
to do it Tuesday? Well, Tuesday we got GPA's budget. Why don't we bang it out now so we don't have to do it?
That's fine, I'll just tell you right now, John, we took the same approach. About the revenue, we carry all our debt service first and then take it from there.
Maybe I can just give you the highlights.
Give us the highlights of your GM
That'll
report.
shorten the Tuesday meeting.
Yeah,
So, first thing I was going to update you on is the Series 2020B refunding.
okay, good.
So we issued the pricing wire for on-island retail sales this morning.
Okay,
5 p.m. was the cutoff for retail orders for the bonds here on Guam. We anticipate.
Did you get any orders?
I didn't, I've been in here, so I
Oh,
don't
yeah,
know.
you don't know. Okay. Let us know Tuesday.
I will
Just see
I'll
my-
let you, I sent an email out tonight, just because we should know, but we plan on pricing
400.
tonight. We'll get a market update and pre-pricing wire out at about 10 o'clock tonight. So what we're looking at, based on the latest data that was provided to us a few days ago on the 18th, or I'm sorry, as of this morning, actually. So we have a couple scenarios. The current, what we feel confident we can achieve with the current market conditions is a refunded par of $142 million in those bonds for the maturities from 2029 through 2043, which will net us present value savings of $14 million. I think if you
Nice.
recall,
Nice.
when we were, before you pre-pandemic, in February, we were anticipating only $9 million. Market conditions have improved such that we're now anticipating $14 million in savings.
good.
Is that net of fees, or
That's net.
that's net of fees, okay?
9.88% present value savings, total all new tick of 3.59%.
Wow.
And debt service savings
time
ranging
to borrow.
from 1.6 million to 2 million a year out until 2028, and then it drops off after that. For the other scenarios, if market conditions improve and we do all the maturities from 2024 to 2043, we might get slightly less in terms of total present value savings of 13.7 million, with that being 8.53% and then an all-in TIC of 0.56. And this annual debt service savings ranging from 1.9 million, 5.7 million, but only out until fiscal year 25. So this number, if we get an improvement in the spreads, then this number might tighten up and we could realize additional savings. So we're looking at that. We'll watch that. We'll get an update tonight before we start, but I wanted to present it as something that is potential because
Sure.
City feels that if the market goes well, we might be able to realize that.
Because your second scenario front loads a little more of your debt service savings,
Right.
which is good. Good. Take some pressure off rates, future rates.
So the last time I updated you, the taxable municipal issuances started to rise after the COVID-19 pandemic. In June, it saw an 800% increase over the previous June in fiscal 2019. July numbers compared about the same as June numbers in terms of the number of issuances on the market. So if you turn to the next slide, you can kind of see City provided us what it's looking like. Bottom right, you can see the taxable supply for June and July in the gray bars there. They're kind of the same. And so far in August, there's been numbers that have been higher than 2018. But there's, I think, 8 billion a week has been the supply available. So there are other competing bonds that will be issued the same week, but we're earlier. It's going to be Tuesday there when we do it, and so the other competing bond issuances are towards the end of the week in New York. And on the next slide, you can see again how our numbers looked right before the pandemic. We were estimating 9 million in savings. The market was essentially shut down in March and April. In May, the numbers didn't look good enough for us to do. And then in July, we started to approach where we were pre-pandemic. And so that the estimate in late July was 9 million. And as of the posting of the PUS last week, we were at 12 million. And so now we're looking at potentially 14 to 16 million in
Nice.
savings. Okay, that covers the bond. Next slide, we can just give you our current numbers for workforce availability. We're at 93.4%. I think we're still doing well. We don't have any positive cases.
What is the COVID quarantine one and the COVID medical risk one? This is one of our employees, and
This is down below.
Indirect exposure for someone who's
indirect.
yeah, so they're quarantining, and then we have someone who's
That's
either
a
the
household
employee
member.
or the household
got
member
it.
is at
Okay.
risk, so they're staying or teleworking.
Okay, and so they're not coming on the property. Okay, good, thank you.
Production for the month of July, we did average 38.3 MGD. We had, as of the end of the month, 91 wells active, 11 on standby. As I mentioned previously, we've been trying to maximize the number of wells on standby in order to reduce our production costs, our energy costs, and so we're getting by on that.
You may want to reduce your Navy buy and put those wells back online when you look at those numbers, because
If you have the capacity to move it down there.
your
That's what-
power bill is maybe cheaper than your Navy rate increase.
Yeah.
So
You just
but
need
I
to
know
have
that's-
the.
you're good at
the-
that, so look at
The
that.
pipes to go move it down though.
Yeah, true.
On the distribution summary, central and southern pump stations at 100% operability and northern at 92.3%, but we're still doing very well, 96.4% on average. Tank levels have been stable, no issues there. We're managing to keep our reservoirs full. On the wastewater side, our pump operability is continuing the upward trend, 91.2%, which has been better than it's been previous months during this fiscal year. We're in the 80s. So we're making a little bit of improvement there and still working to get our critical inventories up to speed for the
Quick-
wastewater pump stations.
Quick question, Miguel.
Commissioner Sanchez.
Yeah. Is Baza Gardens completely sending all of its flow to the agate plant now?
Yes.
Okay, so, I mean, again, it's anecdotal. I know one of our ratepayers, Mr. Pleadwell, still believes all that algae out in front of his property on the water is coming. He doesn't believe that Baza Gardens is shut down or is no longer leaking or leaching into the Tokcha River. Is there any way we can reassure him of, and I know it's not the first time we've tried, and maybe you can't, right? Maybe you can't convince people, but for the record, Baza Gardens is sending all of its flow to agate.
That's correct.
Nothing's going down the Tokcha River. So his belief that all of that algae that is in front of his property now came from GWA, came from Baza Gardens would be inaccurate.
It'd be inaccurate. It's not coming from our plant, our former plant.
Right, okay, so arguably it may not, if it's there now, and it was there before, you could even almost argue that it might not have been coming from our plant to begin with.
To begin with, yeah.
But his anecdote that it's incorrect for him to say that Baza Gardens is still operating and causing flow into the Tokcha River that is affecting his property, right?
Well, I mean, it was a consent, it was a EPA, EPA that confirmed that, correct? Yeah, I mean.
Some people just can't get convinced,
Yeah.
no matter how you tell them. I know the
tell them.
chairman's talked to them, I've talked to
I've
them.
talked
That's
to
it, that was a part of the consent
We
decree.
told them once Baza Gardens
It was part of the
was sending to agate,
court order.
it shouldn't be an issue, and
was part of the court.
it's been almost a year now that we've
But
been
in order
sending,
to
how long has
get
Baza been
relief,
shut down?
From that court order, we had to prove that.
Yeah,
it
yeah.
was
Yeah, no, we
we're in
have.
compliance.
It's been about a year,
We have.
because agate's been
And I've
open.
told him, I said, we're done.
But, is there
So
a
more than a year.
document from either?
No, 7
That's
months.
good. Miguel, if we have any documents from EPA stating that that portion of our court order is done, completed, that'd be good to show
Well, we
him.
make those reports to them, and they've accepted those reports. So
Okay, so then give him a copy of that report.
Sure.
Say, this is the report we gave EPA, they accepted it, we're done. Commissioner Sanchez is right. He's talked to Jeff. We like Jeff. Jeff's a nice, we go eat, right? And we've talked to Jeff, but Jeff just doesn't want to believe, no matter what we say.
Well, I think what he's asking is some sort of proof. So, I mean, if we provide him the
The report to EPA and
That's
accepted by
suffice.
EPA.
You're correct, Commissioner Limtego. I think our frustration is the chairman, myself, Miguel's predecessor, maybe even Miguel, I hadn't heard, but I've been telling him over the years that when Baza Gardens shuts down, and it's not clear that Baza Gardens was the source to begin with, because it's still happening now, and Baza Gardens been shut down for 7-8 months since December, right? So, but we told him that agate's coming, Baza will be shut down, agate has shown up, that plenty of people know agate's around.
And it's working.
Yet, he still posted Sunday that, hey, there's algae and it's coming from Baza Gardens, which isn't sending any flow down the Tokcha River.
Yeah.
And I know Mr. Kemp had even seen him and said, hey, you're blaming that algae on the wrong thing. Because even when Baza Gardens was operating, right? And now that Baza Gardens isn't operating, you still got algae. So that's where Mr. Kemp had even said, hey, you're not a biologist and you're sort of claiming something that's not true. It's okay, we know, build agate, shut down Baza, those are good decisions for the environment. But I noticed a post that he's still claiming that the algae is coming from Baza, and I just want that on the record for the public. It's not coming, Baza Gardens is, and the agate, the world-class agate wastewater treatment plant with secondary treatment is performing its job as required by the court order, and EPA is very happy with those two projects, shutting down Baza and because you opened up agate. And just want to make sure that we get that out at least on the record from our side.
Okay. Miguel, do you have any other highlights?
Maybe, so the operational highlights would be the same. I just have one other thing that I think is worth mentioning, and I'll turn your attention to this chart, which is now wrong.
The page.
What page?
The one you're on, the meter page, it's 18 on my hand up, but yeah, that one.
Okay.
What page is that?
345.
345.
Yeah.
Okay,
So the number in the box there on the right
12?
indicates at the end of July that there were 12 LP meters left to replace, and Chris has an announcement.
so there's no more LP meters.
The 20-year meter replacement program is, the 5-year meter replacement program is now completed in its 20th year?
20th year.
Right on.
We saved that
the
one
operative word
and
is
shadow box it and hang it in the lobby.
Okay, and the back building, I noticed Talling's car's not getting scratched, or you're managing that properly, right?
One of the things that we're doing with backfilling is we're working with customer service, so before we send out any backfills,
Contacted, good.
and
You work with them. So that's really calmed down, right? Right, and you're seeing some of the revenue recovery as well, right? Okay. And, did you talk about ARs and all that? How are you doing on collections and stuff in light of COVID? And what is our collection, has our collection policy changed since the governor's 2-week lockdown? Yeah, I'm with you. I'm looking, I'm following the hand. The hand is going over there.
So,
Good
you want to
delegation.
talk to the collections?
yeah, so our collection rate is, we'll continue to monitor that despite the fact that unemployment insurance.
How many payment plans do we have with ratepayers now? Or as long as you have let us know Tuesday if you don't have
You can
that.
let us
I
know
think Chris
Tuesday.
has an update. Do you have an update? As of the time we posted the POS, I know there was 500.
So out of our 43,000 customers, water/wastewater, we only have 400 payment plans, 1%. That's better than COVID. Much better than COVID, okay. But I mean, and that's good, and that's a testament to our ratepayers and to our management that working with our folks, only 1% of our ratepayers are on a payment plan. And then how is your delinquency on that, Chris?
We continue to have customers that break the plan. The average is 100,
And then come back on.
but month over month, we did have just a slight uptick in our 61 days plus. Commercial side actually improved.
Yeah, so our fear is going to be kind of like that second wave after the federal money stops flowing to employees who are out of work, and if the economy doesn't recover, then that's next fiscal year we might feel some pressure.
So what about the 4 point, oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. So what about the 4.9 million that's over 120 days on your aging for the residential side? Is that inclusive of the payment plan, or are you just referring to the 61 to?
0.9 includes inactive accounts, and there's also accounts that are under dispute, accounts that are on payment plans. So when we back out the inactive accounts, the accounts under dispute, payment plans, 61 days plus AR for residential is about 978,000.
And that's over a number of years, yeah?
Out of the nearly 6 million, so almost 5 million is in those other 3 categories that you backed out? So could you, Chris, for the next week's meeting, if you can break down what those 3 different categories you mentioned, the payment plan, aging, what did you say they were? The inactive accounts? Accounts under dispute. So what are we doing about that? I know maybe 2 or 3 meetings ago, we wrote off some bad debt. At what point in time, these are not classified as bad debt as of now?
I think so.
Inactive.
To my knowledge,
Okay.
we'll have to confirm that. All be within the 4 years statute of
So Tuesday?
Yeah, give us an update on Tuesday.
That'd be good.
I have
Go ahead.
just two other things I'd like to say. Last week, Friday, several of our staff assisted with putting on a Western Pacific subsection of the AWWA. Normally we have an annual in-person conference. This year they did a virtual micro-conference, just 4 hours, and there was a keynote speaker who touched on PFAS. But I'd just like to commend the employees for participating and helping put it on. I think it was a success. We had updates from, and actually really good participation from our Outer Islands counterparts, including Kembo Mita from Duke, and Pohnpei Utilities. So some presentations there, and that was good. And also, Mr. Kemp received a recognition from AWW National for lifetime membership. So he deserves some accolades there. So congratulations to Mr. Kemp.
Yeah.
Hey, Joe, that was the one we're supposed to have here this year?
Yeah. So we did the best we could under the.
Yeah, because nobody's traveling.
Most especially FSM?
So even Region 9 participated. We had several members.
Cool.
So I was very,
Very
careful
cool.
about what I said about our projects.
All on time?
Okay, there's nothing else? We'll move to adjourn?
Yes, sir. See you
Meeting's
Tuesday.
adjourned.
Thank you. Good meeting. Thank you, everybody.